So I kindly invite Zenit to deliver the welcome speech.
Good evening, all of you. On behalf of the Index Committee, I would like to welcome the guest speaker of today's session, Mr. Nishan Chaturanga Vikramratne, the President of Intex, Nimna Pereira, Secretary of Intex, Jima, Rihanna, and every one of the Intex Committee members. And also, I would like to warmly welcome all of the FIT undergraduates who have gathered here with us. Today's session will be conducted on internship interview and CV tips, which is very important for every undergraduate to learn before taking their first step into the industry. This will be conducted by Mr. Nishan Vikramratne, who is an alumnus of our faculty and a senior software engineer at 99Next. So I invite all of you to get the maximum out of this session and to gain insights to pave your career path. Thank you.
Thank you, Zenit, for those pleasant words. So yes, coming to today's main agenda, I kindly invite our amazing speaker for the day, Mr. Nishan Chaturanga, who is here with us amidst his busy schedule to share some valuable tips on how to ace up your interview and polish up your CV. So as Zenit mentioned, he's no stranger to the FIT family, and we are really grateful for your presence, Aya. So over to Aya. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those kind words, guys, and for having me. So my name is Nishan, and I am going to talk about few things that you need to know regarding interview and CVs. I'm going to go through the points that I saw and I still see when interviewing undergraduates and looking at their CVs. So I hope you will get more out of this session if you're planning to pursue a career in this area, right? So today, basically, what I want to tell you guys is the set of skills that you need to have in terms of landing a good job in this software industry, and some insights that I can give you as an interviewer, considering that I was working for like 2.5 years in the industry now, and I will discuss at the end any issues that you might have also related to this, right? Okay, we'll carry on. So first of all, what are the tools that are available for you to get a job in this industry? So first of all, your first tool is your CV. This is something that I assume you already know, but since if you don't know already to work on your CV, you should start at this point. If you are like new to this industry, there are no such things as like guidelines or other how to create a good CV. It's all depend on what you know and what you possess as an undergraduate. But as an interviewer, I see a few things that can be improved in terms of CV creating and CV writing, right? So let me like walk you through few things that you need to know in terms of that you need to think about when you're creating your CV. Basically, you will have this education, experience, references, and all, and then you have skills, your contact details, and everything. And so these are very typical things to add into your CV. But the most important thing I see when it comes to the CV is this your profile statement, or we call it as the biography sometimes. This is something that you mention about you by yourself. So people tend to disregard this section because some people don't really understand the value of this. You should always have a good profile statement about yourself, mentioning your personal qualities, skills, and experience if you have any. If you don't, that is also fine. But you should always mention that what you are and what you are passionate about in this. This is like some people read this, but some people don't. But if this one is one liner or two liner, then definitely we think that you don't have to, I mean, you don't have anything to say about yourself. So basically, you should have something like this, mentioning your skills. As in here, I'm a hardworking, ambitious individual with great passion for designing a publication, etc. So something like this, you should prepare. This will also be helping you to, answer the first question whenever you are in an interview. That is, the question is, tell me about yourself, right? That is not myself that you learned in your kindergarten. This is something that you have to, say with passion and, uh, and communicate properly, because that is the first point, or the first thing that the interviewers are going to hear about you. So that is why this is important. So this part I see very often, that undergraduates, not even from our faculty, from other faculties as well, they tend to write something, copy something out from the internet and put it there. But it is better if you can come up with your something that from your own words, and but be professional here. So yeah, you should think about this. Another thing is these things: fonts, contrast, photo, and alignments. Sometimes people have this kind of an alignment issues in their CVs, and sometimes they have used these bad contrasting images and bad contrasting colors in their CVs. And sometimes people use uh, I mean, these artistic fonts in their CVs. Don't do that. You should always, create it properly and understand that this is not going to be reviewed by your colleagues. This is going to be reviewed by the HR people in a company and other senior technical people in a team, maybe in a company. Maybe sometimes the CEO will also be looking at your CVs. So you should always think about that. So someone might ask, so why it is important to have this aligned? So imagine if you are a senior software engineer in your company, and or maybe you are a CEO of your company, and you come across this CV from an individual with bad alignment. So what will you think? You will think, okay, this person have time to even correct alignments, or rather he or she have a problem in their eyes, because this is very apparent issue, right? So if you cannot spot these things, then the people that are going to hire you will also think this person is careless about things. So those are not kind of people that we want to hire, right? So that is why this is really important. And think about colors and also your photo as well, because some people put a photo that just like the one in your profile photo in your Facebook, right? So those kind of things you shouldn't do. So think about this contrast as well. I'll explain a bit about that. So you can see this first one is a good contrasting photo. The second one doesn't really uh, qualify as a contrasting photo, because that hurts your eyes, right? And the third one is you should always select sans serif fonts instead of serif fonts. This is we are borrowing these guidelines from the UX principles. So that is why we need to consider everything when you're going to create your CV, because serif fonts is for but, for books and likewise all those publications, but sans serif is for web and CVs. That is kind of a norm in the world. So I guess you should follow these things as well, because I see CVs typed from Times New Roman time to time. So that is not a good font. It is a font, but that is not going to be a very good readable font when it comes to CVs. It will take away the professionalism that you are going to that you're trying to put into a CV. That is why these things must be stressed and stressed again, because even if you know these things, you think in your mind serif fonts are beautiful, then you put serif fonts. So try to stick into these guidelines, and then you will be okay, right? So yeah, about the image, be professional, always look at the camera, and we make sure that you have appropriate lighting, and then highlight professionalism, not charm, and avoid unnecessary accessories. Just wear appropriately. You don't have to be in a tux always, but you should wear something nice and tell your mom to take the photo. And you don't have to pose up straight, right? You can be somewhat like these photos here I have mentioned. So it doesn't matter. Always make sure that you convey the message, or rather you convey your identity in your image. Then you should be good. uh, Maybe you might have mixed opinions about these things that I'm talking about. You might say, okay, that is not very important, my skills are the important thing, and my experience is the most important thing. Yes, that is true, but there can be some cases, due to these things, these small issues, your series will get rejected. Everybody is not the same, right? Every company or every HR is not the same. Some companies don't care about this, some companies do. So you might want to try to uh, magnify your chances, so that you will get selected anyway, because we are talking about the internship, and you should get hired before the deadline, and or maybe 1 or 2 week after the deadline, you should definitely get hired. That always happens in our faculty, so don't worry. But you should always keep in mind that these things are important for some people, so you should follow them, right? Okay, but don't lie on your CVs. Otherwise, this is the thing that is going to happen. The things you might mention, Python, right? But if you don't know Python, and if a company hires you specifically for that reason, that you know Python, then if you get a Python project and if you ask for 2 weeks to learn Python, that is going to make a bad impression on you, right? That is not going to work well. But most of the companies understand that as at this stage you don't know much about programming languages, much about all these frameworks and all. So they give you time to grow, they give you time to go ahead and learn these frameworks and technologies and languages. But don't mention Python if you don't know, because sometimes they are asking a question like this: rate your Java knowledge, or rate your Python knowledge. So if you say, okay, my Java knowledge is 10 out of, 8 out of 10, 8 out of 10 Java knowledge is a huge knowledge, right? That is something, you should be able to run a Java program on, you should be able to run a Java front end maybe, or other Java backend, or Java applets. Maybe you should be able to fly a rocket using Java. That kind of level they are expecting if you say 8 out of 10, right? Because Java, the things that you know as Java or C is not really the entire scope that we see as Java, right? Because in our universities we learn mostly about these control flows, loops, if else statements, and object-oriented concepts and algorithms. That is not everything when it comes to a programming language. There are a lot more, right? So that is why you should never lie. Even so you are learning C and Java in your undergraduate studies. So mentioning C and Java is fine. So we know as interviewers that you only know up to certain amount. So that is fine. But if you don't know something, let's take an example like a framework, maybe React. Since yeah, since these days React is trending, but you don't know React, but you put React in your CV just to get a position. But that is not really recommended, because if that is the case, they will ask questions from React and you will not be prepared for that, and so you will fail the interview. I will tell you a trick or two to overcome in such cases, but that should happen before the interview. I'll tell you when I get to that point, right? Okay, so having these are also, I consider them as tools. So GitHub, Stack Overflow, HackerRank, LinkedIn, you can use these to showcase your knowledge, right? If you are open source contributor, or if you like to work on uh, your own projects in your leisure time, you can put them onto GitHub. And you can, if you are like into volunteering and if you like to help other people, you can showcase them on LinkedIn. You can, if you have gone to any competitions and you have won something, your achievements and all, you can put them on LinkedIn. And if you don't like to do that, you can go to HackerRank and try out few algorithms and languages, so that you are updated about all these language features. And Stack Overflow, if you like to help other developers in the community and provide answers, while doing that you can build your own reputation as well in Stack Overflow. So if you like to do that, you can have a Stack Overflow profile and try to answer questions from other people. Likewise, you can use these platforms for um, your beneficial, right? So this is something that I take I think is very important, because most of the times that the question we get is, should I mention my GPA? So because some people don't have a good GPA, maybe you have GPA like 2.5 and maybe 3. So people having 4+ GPAs, and so you don't have a good GPA. So what should you do, right? So in that cases, we recommend you to go ahead and do these things. And if you come across anything, any competition, maybe try to participate. Maybe try to go into HackerRank and try to create a profile and try out few examples there. If you are still entering into this industry, maybe C, you are starting with C, right? So I try to use C as your entry point and understand all these concepts in algorithms and data structures. Likewise, you can do that. But if you do that, then your GPA doesn't really matter, because there are companies who specifically look for GPAs, because they know that if you can be taught and if you are guided properly, you can understand anything. That is why they just look for the GPA. But we also understand that not everybody is good at learning. I mean, having maintaining a good GPA. There may be many reasons. I mean, we don't want to get into those, but there can be cases where people don't have a good GPA, but then again, he or she is having a good understanding in technical stuff. He or she is updated about new trends in the industry. He or she knows cloud, and he or she knows how to host a web application built by themselves, in a virtual machine. Likewise, there can be many reasons that we don't look for this GPA specifically, because you can prove you are a good candidate using other qualities. Maybe you are a genuine, friendly, uh, honest person. That alone is enough sometimes, because we don't want a thief who knows good, who have good coding knowledge and who have good GPA. But if he or she is a thief, he or she tries to smuggle the code base out from the company and sell it somewhere, then we don't want people like that. Or he or she makes bombs in your company. We don't want people like that. So that is why we we try to see beyond GPA and try to understand the candidate when it comes to this whole issue about GPA, right? So yeah, if you are uncomfortable about GPA, you shouldn't mention it. That is also fine, because if we know that if you haven't mentioned it, you sorry, you don't want to mention it, and but that doesn't mean you can get a I mean a good score on interviews, because you have to prove that you have other qualities. That is the point of this, not about mentioning, don't mentioning a GPA, right? So when I say that, the next question is, I don't have a good GPA, but even I don't have good technical knowledge, no volunteer experience, I haven't participated to do any companies, right? So if this is the case, if you are in this is not applicable for level 1 and 2 guys, because you have time to do those. But if you're batch 19 and if you haven't done any of those, so you should do is go to YouTube and search for a crash course. This should be crash, right? I'll maybe try to explain this using my web browser. I should change that slide as well. So yeah, what you should do is, I hope you can still see this one. You can search for what, let's say, React crash course. So likewise, you can search for this. And if you have searched for it, you will get like courses in like very small courses. This course is 2 hours long. This course is 4 hours. That is too long, I guess. So this is also 1 hour long course. These are 11 hours long courses. That don't take those. Take this 1 or 2 hour long course, and then what you should do is create the project in that course and put it into GitHub. And if you follow this one in a week, you can learn 7 frameworks, 1 framework for per day, right? This is not going thoroughly into the framework. This is just skimming through the framework and understanding what this framework is and how to get data, or how to implement routing in this framework. So if you take React, learning how to call an API and get routing, get data, and if clicking on a button and navigating into another page, if you know those two aspects of a framework, that is fine for the moment, right? So you can learn everything else when you come to the industry, if you land the job. If not, you have always another week for the next until the next interview, right? So you can do that. And if also, what else you can do is create a portfolio with the things that you did. You can easily get a template from the internet like this. Let me open up this one. These are like free HTML templates. So likewise, you can create portfolios like this. These websites can be hosted in GitHub pages, free of charge. You can Google search for how to host a web page in GitHub page, and host this kind of a web page with the work that you have done. So you can see these are free to download, so you can download them and create your own portfolio. Then in your CV, you should mention those links and the GitHub link, because that will, then if you have a GitHub link, we will definitely go into that and see what have you done, and see what are the frameworks that you have, followed, and how you write code, what are the practices that you're using when you're writing code. Likewise things we check for those things, basically, when we get when we get a CV, right? Because that is what you should know when it comes to when it comes to this industry. Otherwise, uh, at the end of the day, what you have to do is work on a client project with like 10 to 15 people as a team. So we not only your technical skills, your object-oriented skills, we actually want you to know these things. I'll get to those in a second, right? So learning these frameworks, you should always pick something up that you are comfortable with. Just don't go with the flow because everybody's learning React. You don't have to learn React. If you like, Angular, maybe you like something called maybe another JavaScript framework like Solid. Maybe you like those things. You can learn those. Selecting one is one that suits for you is up to you. It doesn't matter what you do because there are companies that specifically ask for React internship. That is not the case. For internship, we don't, specifically target a framework or a programming language. That is for software engineers, senior software engineers. For internships, we don't look for people who have studied React, who have studied, machine learning. We don't do that. We don't do that here. So anyway, for that reason, so you should always try to enhance your knowledge. That is the only thing, right? So yeah, go ahead and learn something. But if you're stuck in a place, if you find something hard. So for an example, for Angular, if you are not very comfortable with modularizing and all these components and all, then you might want to spend like 2 or 3 days to understand that properly. So if that is the case, you shouldn't stick to that. You should always go ahead and try to follow something else. So this is me trying to learn JavaScript. Don't be like me. If you don't like JavaScript, you can always go and find another framework or a language like Go, Python, maybe C Sharp, likewise. Right. So this is the level 2 software project. I want to stitch this one with the last question actually. So if you don't have any volunteering experience or competition, so hackathon experience, likewise you should definitely market this one, because this we basically want after the basic questions like object oriented concepts and algorithms, data structures, those are like some basic questions that you will get. Not really basic, but those are the areas that we will ask questions upon, which you will learn, by the way, in your level 1 and 2, maybe 3, level 3 semester 1. So you are learning those things in your university studies. If you've done that properly in your university, you don't have to worry about those things. But the level 2 project, we mainly ask for these things like what are the frameworks that you have used, your responsibilities and contribution towards the project, and the high level architecture of the project. And when it comes to the teamwork, what was it like to be in a team? So these things we normally ask from undergrads when they are looking for an internship. And this is something you should prepare answers for if you haven't done your level 2 project properly. If you have done it, then these things are also nothing, because you know these things by heart. So when it comes to this high level architecture, this is like the most important thing. We want to check your technical knowledge by asking this question. So you should know the answers to these questions. What is an API? How you handled authentication and authorization? There may be people who have done your level 2 project with flying colors, but you don't know the difference between authentication and authorization, right? So you should know these things. Otherwise, no point in getting an A plus for your level 2 project. And databases used and why, and problems faced during this, implementing this architecture. This architecture means what is the database, what is the API, right? How you communicated between the mobile application and the API, how you communicated between the web application and your database, right? Likewise, those are the questions that you need to know when it comes to high level architecture, not anything else. But there are things called architectures or design patterns as well. So if you have used Angular, that is uh, MVVM design pattern, model view model design pattern. Likewise, different frameworks, different from languages have different architectures and design patterns. So if you know these things, that is good. But in our faculty, I guess these things these things can be learned in level 3 semester 1. So most of you guys don't know about these things, but if you know these things, this is good. So if you can read about these things from somewhere before you go to the interview, I guess that is very good. That will give you a plus point comparing to others. And also you should know exception handling as well. So imagine if you want to log in a user and if the database is not responding, how you handle this. We don't ask for how you checked invalid emails, how you checked for duplicate passwords. We don't ask that. We just want these things. So that is why you should focus on these things, because even if you done this project with very good satisfaction, but if at the end of the day, if you can't understand these concepts, why you do a software project basically, then you will not properly you haven't done your project properly. So that is why you should know these things as well. So imagine a person with having no experience at all related to this competitions, volunteering experience or anything. Then if you have done your level 2 software projects, then you are good. Uh, uh, but if you haven't done your software project very good as well, then you should go back to the previous slide and follow what I said, and try to learn at least one or two frameworks, and create a small project between using those things. Maybe can be a calculator, can be something. We have these free APIs available in the internet, like maybe open with a yeah. So you can create a front end application using this already available free APIs. You can create a weather applications likewise. So how to create those? There are tons of tutorials in the internet and in the YouTube freely available. So you do not have to worry about that as well. It's all about your um, ability to follow those things and your contribution to the fact that getting a good job, right? Okay, so this is something, some kind of a high level architecture, as you can see. So where is your web application? Where is your mobile application? Where is your database? How are you going to send emails? If you have that function, if you don't have that, that is fine. If you have SMS functionality, how are you going to send SMSs? So likewise, you should know. That is what I mentioned. What I am, trying to say, mentioning this high level architecture, right? Okay, authorization and authentication. Authorization is what you can do. Basically, the user access level, and authentication is who you are, your identification. Likewise, there are many things that you need to know. Okay, another question. So imagine you don't like software engineering. That is okay. There are many other fields like UX, software quality assurance, and business analyst, DevOps, support engineers. Likewise, there are many positions that you can look for. But these things are not very common as software engineering internships. That is why we recommend you should try to get a SC internship if possible. If that is not a, if you don't feel like doing that, you should try to look for these vacancies from the early stages, because these things are not very common and they are very scarce. So that is this is in some companies there are many opportunities. Like there are some companies who doesn't have BA business analyst positions. There are some companies who doesn't have quality assurance engineer positions. But every company has software engineering internship positions, right? That is why just for the internship you should try this. But if you really don't want to be a software engineer, then you can follow any of these, because UX, software quality assurance engineers, and business analysts, those uh, we have produced many of these people from our faculty, because the opportunities are there, but only thing is you have to find this and you have to be ready, because we are not teaching you about UX principles, as I know, but and we are not teaching about quality assurance principles in your level 1, 2, or 3, as I know, but I don't know whether the things have changed by this point. But so when I was there, we learned about quality assurance principles when we were in level 4, right? So, but if you like to be a quality assurance engineer, then you should, try to research about these things on your own and be prepared. Then you can definitely get a job. That is what I'm trying to say. So you don't like software engineering, that is totally fine. Right. Habits that you need to have. This is more like skills and habits, because you shouldn't be specializing into a certain area. So if you like, so in simple terms, if you like Java, then you should learn 3 or 4 other software programming languages as well. You should learn C, C Sharp, C++, Python. Likewise, you should have a somewhat level of understanding about those things. That is what I mentioned by breadth of knowledge. But you should always follow your passion. And if you like Java, you should always learn Java into depth. That is what I mentioned by depth of expertise, right? So these engineers, these type of engineers, we call them as T-shaped engineers. This is a very important thing, because knowing or specializing into one area is good, but you should know that there are other things as well, because there are things that cannot be done in your expertise. There can be instances that those things can be done in other areas. Like there can be scenarios where one thing in C# cannot be done in the Java, right? So you should learn C# to do that one. Likewise, you have to have that mindset. So if you are a developer, then you should have an understanding about requirement analysis, and you should have an understanding about testing as well, right? So that is why we call them as T-shaped engineers. They are like a very key aspect of agile principles, which are a set of principles that we use to develop software programs, right? Okay, so I'm not going to go deep into this. So I hope you understood this. I'm just mentioning that you shouldn't follow one area. You should, but you should have an understanding about other areas as well. Even if it is another programming language, or even if it is another profession entirely. Because as developers also, you should know to write unit tests and all. So software testing is a key aspect of a developer, even though analysis is not, right? Yeah, so this is the key takeaway from that section. Do your homework and be prepared. This can be learned, because otherwise you will think, okay, software engineering is really hard. I don't know how to write a for loop. I can't even write a bubble sort. Likewise, you are really frustrated about these things. That is not the case. This is not something that you bring when you are born, right? So these things can be learned. Only thing is this you haven't followed the proper guidance, or rather you are not uh, following an accurate course, or an accurate tutorial, right? So that can be the only reason that you are hating the software engineering field, or coding, or anything, right? Even if you are a QA means quality assurance engineer, If you are a tester also nowadays, you should know test automation. Test automation is writing a code to automate your test cases. So there are also some kind of software coding knowledge is involved. So I guess don't hate coding. Maybe you haven't tried a different tutorial, try a different guidance, uh, guiding program, right? So maybe you can ask one of your friends to teach you. That is how you learn, because otherwise you are not going to survive. um, and you should always do your homework. What I mean by homework is this: these things are, these things are coming in your um, coursework. So as an example, object oriented concepts are introduced to you in your level 2, and solid principles. If you don't know solid principles, you should definitely go and check for these things. These are highly interrelated with object oriented concepts. And then data structures and algorithms, databases, enterprise applications development, which is coming in level 3, which will introduce you to design patterns and cloud architectures and all. So basically, these things are, taught to you in your university, but you have to go deep dive. Like when it comes to object oriented concepts, overloading, overriding, multiple inheritance, these things are should be your focus, because everybody knows those 4 concepts of software engineering: inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation, abstraction. Likewise, those things everybody knows. But as interviewers, we look for these, things that you definitely not going to look at when it comes to an interview, like your A levels, right? So that is why you need to go ahead and check for these things as well. So solid principles are coding best practices, and data structures. You should know stacks, queues. FIFO means first in, first out. Big O notation, recursion. Likewise, you should know those things as well. And when it comes to stacks and queues, you should know the applications of these things. Maybe you know how to implement a queue or a stack using Java, maybe using C Sharp. That is fine. But if you don't know why we should use queues and why we should, use stacks, what are the applications? Then, I mean, if you don't know these things, then what is the point of learning this? So if you are comfortable in implementing a stack or a queue in Java or in C or anything, ask yourself, do I know the applications of queues? Right. If you don't know that, then you should definitely go ahead and check for these things. That is why I mentioned this section as homework, right? And when it comes to, yeah, so when it comes to databases, normalization, SQL joins, those things will be very valuable. And the design patterns and cloud and all. So you should know these things as well. Right. So you might say, okay, I know OOP, right? So I disagree. That is not the case. I know people who come into us and screw up the OOP concepts from you know from the very first question. So do you know the you don't can you explain the concept of a constructor? Can you specify the accessibility modifiers for methods inside an interface? Is it possible to for a class to inherit the constructor of its base class? Why do we need polymorphism and how it is used? What is the compile time polymorphism and how it is different from the runtime polymorphism? What is the meaning of life? Why are we here? What is life all about? So yeah, I was just kidding about the last 3 questions. So these things are the ones that we actually look for specifically, because we don't ask. We ask that what mention explain the main 4 concepts of object-oriented programming that we do. But apart from that, going beyond that, do you know? I mean, do you know really how to implement inheritance? Do you know why do we need inheritance? What is the purpose of inheritance? What is the purpose of life? So that is the question that we will ask once the interview is over, right? Because you screwed up all these questions, and then while you are coming home or rather you are shutting down your computer, you are thinking about this question. That is not what I'm trying to answer. For these things, I guess you should, if you don't know these things, you should do that. So now you can understand step by step. I'm explaining, while explaining this to you, you are now understanding what are the mistakes I'm doing in an interview, right? So maybe you have gone into an interview and you haven't, get a call from HR. So now you should know what are the problems that what are the issues that you demonstrated there. So yeah, so you should go ahead and check for these things, because knowing OOP, you should understand all these questions. So if you can only explain 4 main concepts of object-oriented programming, then you don't know OOP. That is not object-oriented programming. That is just 4 words, and you have memorized those meanings of those 4 words, right? Okay. So take this code segment for an example. This is we have two classes, and if I ask you to predict the outcome of this program, you should be able to provide the correct answer, right? So I'm not going to explain this, but give you an insight, this uh, the static method runs for the first time, and it will print out B and then C, then it will call the scalar class, and it will print out the A next. Likewise, you should follow this, you should be able to follow, or rather you should be able to understand how these programs behave when it comes to object oriented programming. So this is another uh, program. So let me start with this. So find maximum and minimum values in a Java array of primitive types. So how you are going to do this? You should probably create a for loop and then iterate through all these numbers, and you can initialize min value and max value, and then you can set those properties inside the for loop, and at the end of the loop you have these 2 values, min value and max value, right? So yeah, so someone else does it like this. That person actually sorts the array using arrays.sort. This is a function available in Java. And then that person takes the first element. After you sort an array, the first element is the minimum one and the last element is the maximum one, right? So someone do it like this. So this one is much cleaner than the first one. But what is the fastest one in terms of time complexity, right? What is the fastest executing function from these 2 methods? Yeah, so you should know this. So to understand this one, you should know the big O notation of the sort method or sort function, right? So this is O of n log n. The first one is O of n. So likewise, you can determine which one is the fastest one. So these things are taught to you in data structures and algorithms module in your university. So level 1 guys, don't be afraid about these things. You should, as I mentioned earlier, these things can be learned, right? Okay, so learning is not enough. Make a habit to apply them. That's what I mentioned when I say always when you learn something new, you should know the applications of it. If you learn if you're learning about queues, if you're learning about stacks, maybe you are learning about linked lists. If you should always try to come up with applications for that. So if you don't know the applications of the thing that you learn, then you are not good fit for a university. You are fit for A levels, right? So in university, we expect something more than that. I mean, not me, but industry expects something more from you. So that is why you should always look for the applications, right? Okay. As an interviewer, I have a few things to tell you. Those are the things mainly. Basically, you should have this evidence we are looking for this evidence in your CVs. So if you have done any competitions, and if you have done any volunteering work, if you have been some kind of a leadership role, if you have been writing blogs, and so here I mentioned the subject modules as well. So somebody might ask you that whether you know something like let's say uh, something like let's say machine learning. So you haven't go thoroughly into machine learning, but you can say, okay, my university have this subject module, I'm planning to study it in the future, right? So that is a good answer. uh, if you say like no on a get-go, then they will think you don't have a, I mean, you are not passionate about that, right? So you should structure your answers in such a way that you say to the interviewer, okay, I am a good learner, I like to learn new things, but at the moment I don't have the luxury of learning that, but I will definitely go ahead and follow up tutorial or something, and then you can learn about that. So that is what I'm trying to say here. Sorry, yeah. So teamwork, so basically by this point you have done 2 group projects. So that we know, if you mentioned that those projects are group projects, then we know that okay, you are a good, you can be in a situation where the team can trust you with to get the work done, right? That might not be the case for but since you mentioned it, we assume you have a good teamwork, right? And leadership, if you have been a batch representative, or you have been in a committee, team leader or something, then we know you have good leadership, right? Now, having all these things is not a must, so always you don't have to have good communication skills. Teamwork you need to have, uh, good leadership, because not you are going for an interview, right? I mean internship interview, right? So you don't have to have leadership skills at this point, and you should not have in work experience at this point. But you have to provide proof for that in such a way that we understand you have somewhat level of an experience. So as for an example, work experience, level 2 project is something that you do with the industry, right? This is the requirements are given by the industry people, and you are working with an industry company. So that is somewhat similar to working in a real world project, right? So that is why you should mention your level 2 project, and what is the mentoring organization. And if you have before coming to university you have worked in some other place, you can mention that. Maybe you did an internship in a bank, you can mention that. Maybe you have standard chartered uh, no chartered accounting qualifications, you can mention that. Standard chartered is a bank, right? So yeah, so likewise you can mention those things, and provide proof or your evidence, right? Again, I'm stressing this point. You don't have to have all these things. Just ticking 1 or 2 boxes here should be fine, right? And your GPA also, this is these stats were taken from batch 15, which is my batch. So here you can see these are the last 40 people. I think 45, right? 45 people which was remaining after everybody was hired in our batch. So these people eventually got a job, but I just want your focus into this their GPAs. So you can see some people have 3.77 GPAs and some people have 3.76 GPAs. So this says that maybe you have a good GPA, but some companies might reject you depending on how you behave in the interview, right? So that is a thing. So you should focus on understanding this how this demography behaves, right? Maybe you are confident that you have a good GPA, you will get hired definitely. But if you cannot answer all those questions asked from basic uh, subjects like object oriented or SQL, if you are failing those things, then there's no point of hiring you, right? So that is what I'm trying to say here. Yeah, so I'll move on. So sometimes you will get these phone interviews as well. So you should always prepare for these phone interviews just like you are preparing for a real interview, right? You should before that you should practice on your phone, maybe try to record your answers and play it back to identify what went wrong. And you can answer these questions standing up, walking, and you should avoid monotones. You should always smile and answer, even though the person can't see your face. You should always have a you know smiley face and answer these questions. And when it comes to these days also, you are having online interviews, right? So maybe here as well, what I want to say is, try to dress appropriately and find a comfortable private quiet place and inform the people in your house that you are facing an interview. Otherwise they won't shout. We had undergraduates not from our faculty, from other faculties, that there are people screaming in the background. And but the people can be facing many issues in their lives, right? That we understand. But so we are not judging you by that disturbances that we get. But ultimately you are the one who is going to get disturbed if this is the case. Because if you cannot think straight if your surrounding area is full of chaos. That is why we advise this, not that we judge you by these issues that you face in your household or your area that you live in. That is not that is not a problem. So don't take this in a wrong way. Yeah, so this is something that you need to stress about as well. So you should always prepare for these things as you are preparing for a real interview. They might ask you coding questions, they might ask you some technical questions as well sometimes, because all these things are there to shortlist you. Because the companies might get like 100 of CVs, but they don't have time to interview 100 people. So that is why there's a paper, there's a paper called the CV. So they shortlist you by, first of all, they shortlist you using the CV, and then they are trying to shortlist you by a phone interview as well. Some companies do that, some companies don't. Some companies just shortlist you by the CV and call for the interview. And sometimes you will get a physical interview as well. That is a whole another area. You should monitor your, you should behave appropriately. You should think about your body language. You should, learn how to, speak in these online interviews as well. Don't, when online interview is going on, don't try to look away from the monitor. Don't try to, type. Don't try to click if they specifically ask you to. Sometimes they give you coding questions, then you have to type, right, using your keyboard. But if that is not the case, if they ask the meaning of polymorphism and they hear you typing on your keyboard, they think, okay, you are searching on Google. Maybe you are searching, not, yeah, maybe you are not typing, maybe you are not searching for those answers. Maybe you are trying to type something else, but we think you are typing on Google and trying to find this answer using Google. So don't do those kind of things. I'm not going to stress about those things. You should know that your microphone is working and we can hear those sounds very clearly, right? Okay. Attitude, another big issue. Not an issue, another problem. So this is something that um, we actually check using few things. Mainly, we ask you to explain a real life problem, and you can, ask you to explain how you overcame it, and maybe give you a hypothetical situation and ask you ask you to explain what will be your response in that kind of a scenario. So imagine one of your teammates is not hitting deadlines. He's repeatedly not delivering before the deadline. So if you are a team lead, so how are you going to handle that? So those kind of things we ask basically, and then we test whether you are capable of saying no to questions. Because uh, if you don't know anything, I mean, if you don't know the answer to that question, you can definitely say no, but you should provide evidence that for why the reason that you don't know that. So imagine if I ask you, have you heard about factory design pattern? So you can say no because you haven't heard about that, but you should provide evidence why you should why you are not familiar about it. You can say, okay, that is coming in my level 3 coursework, or rather we haven't used that design patterns in our level 2 project. We just try to go with what we have or what the framework gives us out of the box. We didn't try to change any um, you know we didn't try to change the framework or other the design pattern that it comes with. So that is why I don't know factory design pattern. So likewise, you should always try to provide a good no, right? Just not just a plain no. You should provide a good no with the evidence that why you are not knowing about this, right? And when asked about strength and weaknesses, we are checking if you have a positive attitude for your regarding your weaknesses, right? So what are the things that you are trying to overcome your weakness? Likewise, these questions are designed to check what your response. Based on your response, we are trying to understand how you are going to handle certain situations in a company, right? So instead of asking how you would behave in a situation, as I mentioned earlier, we would ask how you have behaved in a past situation. And so we know that your attitude influences your behavior, so we don't have to specifically check for these attitudes using these questions. Sometimes with the way you answer the questions, the way the way you have prepared for the interview, that also says a lot about yourself, a lot about your behavior. So we can understand what is your attitudes in a real life setting as well, right? Okay, so this is a uh, set of requirements for a software developer intern, right? So you can see in this set of requirements, you can see undergraduate following a degree in computer science, and they should have good communication skills, fluency in English, both writing and speaking, full of team spirit and can-do attitude, okay, and willingness to embrace challenges, and being open-minded and wanting to work in a dynamic environment. So here also you can get a clue about the attitudes. Can do attitude. If we ask you something that you cannot do, you should always say, I can do that, but I need time. I might take like 3 weeks to learn Angular, but after that I will try to answer uh, deliver what you have asked from me. Likewise, you can uh, maintain that kind of an attitude, and you always try to embrace challenges, and likewise you should have this kind of requirements. And your roles are these: you should able to troubleshoot user feedback, recommend, execute improvements, right? Produce clean, efficient code based on specification, work with developers to design algorithms and flowcharts, verify and deploy programs. Likewise, so these things you have done if you did your level 2 project properly. If you haven't done this, at least read about these things. Maybe you at the interview you will get surprised, looking at if they ask a question related to these things. If you haven't done these things, maybe you haven't hosted your level 2 project, right? That is fine. Depending on the time you get, you may not have time to host your application. That is fine, but you should know the options you have. If you are using a Node backend, if you are using a React front end, then where are you going to host it? If you have a MySQL database, where are you going to host a MySQL database? You should know those things. You should know where to host it, and what is the cheapest option. Those things you have to research if you haven't done those, right? Okay, this is a developer intern. I'll show you something else as well. This is a QA intern, quality assurance engineer intern requirements. You can see they also need to have the same thing. Can do attitude, the willingness to embrace change, likewise. So yeah, so we don't look for much related to QA things, but I just want you to show that when you are hired, you will get to know these new testing tools and test strategies. These things you are not familiar when you are in level 1 and 2, right? So if you look for a QA intern uh, interview, I mean QA intern position, and if you go to an interview, we actually don't care whether you know QA strategies. I mean, I don't interview QA people, but the people who uh, interview those QA interns, they specifically don't look for these awareness. But if you can, before going to the interview, if you can read about these things, test strategies, what are test cases, how to write a test case, right? How to use, what are the testing tools, if you are familiar with React, maybe what are the types of testing, UI testing, black box testing, likewise there are different types of testing, right? So if you can read about this, at least about one type of a test strategy, then that will be a plus point. Even for UX engineers, even for business analysts, this is the same thing, right? We don't actually look for these things, but if you know this, then this is a plus point. That is what I'm trying to say, right? Okay, so these are the other set of questions that you will get asked. So you should prepare answers for these things. I'm not going to say these things as well. So why do you want this job, or why did you choose this company? That is something that we also ask. So these questions are apart from all those technical questions that I mentioned before, right? Technical and basic questions. So these things are also, we check for your attitude, and we ask these things to understand you as a human being. So what your awareness regarding your career path. For an example, if I ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years, you should know your career path. You should know that, okay, in 5 years I can be a tech lead or a senior tech lead. Likewise, you should know that. So don't give these answers, these I put just to make a point. So yeah, these questions get asked a lot. And another two, what is your biggest weakness, and what is your strength? Likewise, they ask those things as well. And how do you describe yourself? This is I guess the first related to the first question that any interviewer would ask. Explain a little bit about yourself. Likewise, so don't ask there. So those kind of things you will get asked, right? Okay. So after everything, think for a second, would I hire me? So if you are a CEO, or if you are a company, if you are a HR personnel, looking at your CV, would I hire myself into this company? If your answer to this question is no, then all those things I discussed before this slide is for you. You should go ahead and do those things, and then at the end of the next week, you can definitely give yes to this answer, right? So if your answer is yes to this at this point, then you don't have to worry about anything I just said. Maybe you already got the job, maybe you already have a um, good position at this moment, but you should always try to do this even after your level 4. Would I hire myself as a fresh graduate? Would I hire myself as a intern? If you can answer these things, this could be you in couple of years, right? Yeah, I'm just kidding. This is just to make a point, right? So yeah, what do you think about the best impression? So I went to the university for 2 years. Please hire me. Would that be a good impression? I mean, impression is the one that you make after you answer all those questions, and we are the ones who create your impression based on the answers that you gave us, right? As interviewers. So what would be the what would be the good impression as you think? I have worked with these technologies, and I have proof I can be trusted to get the work done, and I will prove it to you in the future, right? So what do you think? Yeah. So I think the second one is the best impression that someone can make, but somebody else might have a different opinion. That is totally fine. It's your choice. So you should work and do that homework I mentioned and try to understand, or rather give your best to get a internship after doing your internship, because internship is necessary to complete the degree program, right? So this our faculty degree is 4 years long, and we need to have 6 months of internship period within that degree, I mean within that scope. Otherwise you will not get the degree, right? You will definitely have to complete the internship program to get the degree. So that is why, as I mentioned earlier, also you should try to go for a software engineer intern job. And once you graduate, once you pass out, then you can choose anything, any profession. You can be a lawyer, you can be a bakery owner, you can be someone else. That is up to you. But to get this, I mean, you can definitely be software engineers, QA engineers, UX engineers. But my point is, you can be anybody else after your level 4 completes. But for this one, you have to follow this internship period, and then only you can showcase that in your CV in your level 4. Okay, I did the level, I mean, I did internship in this company, and you can mention a non-related referrer from that company as well in your after you graduate at that stage in your CV. So that will be a huge plus point. Maybe if you did your level 3 software, I mean internship properly, they might call you for the job as well. Then you don't have to think about going for interviews after level 4, right? Your job is, you can secure your job when you are doing your internship. So that has happened countless of times. People come to you specifically the day you go, I mean the day you, after 6 months, the HR people will definitely ask you to come back when the coursework finishes. So those things have happened, and they are happening at the moment, and that should definitely happen in the future. So you should do well in your internships as well. Then only you can do that, at least to get the degree in your hand after level right. So wrap things up. Tech competency is mandatory, so you should have a good understanding on programming fundamentals, condition loops, try catch, exceptions likewise, and OOP concepts, data structures, algorithms, programming principles like solid and database concept, SQL, NoSQL. We have some candidates coming for internship interviews. They haven't even heard about NoSQL databases. They have only worked with SQL. That is fine. But if I ask you to, say the difference between SQL and NoSQL, you should know, right? So if I ask you, so imagine you are sitting in front of me and you say you used Microsoft SQL Server as your database in your level 2 project, right? So now if I ask why have you chosen Microsoft SQL Server as your database, you should have an answer. You can say, okay, we have relational database, and likewise you can say something. And then I will ask, so why haven't you considered NoSQL databases for at least one function. Maybe you have something, maybe a comment. Maybe your application have a comment functionality. Maybe your application has something, maybe email functionality. So for those kind of small areas of your application, you can use NoSQL database. So if you have a good answer to those questions, then that is fine. But you should at least know the difference between SQL and NoSQL, right? Because yeah, those are very basic things. If you don't know that even, then you are not a good. Then you haven't then you choose SQL Server blindly. You have to know advantages and disadvantages of all these two paradigms of databases to choose one, right? So that is the point that I'm trying to make. Okay. Right. So basic understanding of design patterns, basic understanding of version controls. Version control can be, that is learned, that can be learned when you do the level 2 project. So I guess if you are doing your level 2 project, if you used Git and GitHub, then you know that basic understanding. We just want the basic understanding, right? We know that you are not experts. Okay, so problem solving skills, those are tested by there's programming questions, and likewise we check for some untouched areas in terms of algorithms, explain a real world scenario where you can use a queue, right? So or rather we give you a problem, right? Real world problem, and then you have to select either queue, either stack, or a linked list, and you should apply depending on the problem that we give you. Likewise, we check for that. And experience, these are not mandatory, I guess, because most of you haven't, we actually don't look for these things specifically. Open source contribution, hacker rank, extracurricular activities, we don't check for this specifically. But if you fail in either one of these things, say for an example, you haven't you don't know solid principles, but if you know, if you have a good hacker rank profile maybe, and if you have worked with the real world project, which is the level 2 project, and if you have gone to these competitions and you have won awards, so maybe you have participated, that is also fine. And you have done extracurricular activities, you are a committee member, you are a president of some committee in your university, maybe likewise, then they will definitely help you to mitigate the issues that you face here, right? That is why these things are really important. But yeah, that depends on you, depends on the company, depends on the people who ask the questions. So I guess it's something like 20% luck as well, as my experience. So yeah, so you should at least try to, maybe you don't have time to do those things now, right? Because since the process has already started, you don't have time to go to competitions. Then only thing you have to do is get thorough understanding on these things that I'm mentioning here: programming fundamentals, conditions, loop. Do your homework, basically. That is all what I have to say. And try to check at least one of these check boxes. Maybe you can prove that you are good individual, accepting challenges, you are a good friendly person. It is those things, we are the ones who judge you based on the answers that you give us. If you scared, and you stare at the screen for the entire interview, then we know, okay, you are not friendly, you are scared, and you struggle. So yeah, I guess you can understand. So dependability, communication skills, technically up to date, awareness on career path, blogging, cloud, front-end frameworks, DevOps, those things are not mandatory. If you know these things, then they will. So imagine if you fail, like um, if you fail object-oriented concepts, we don't ask every object-oriented concept from you. We just start 1 or 2 questions from OOP concepts. So if you fail all those 2 OOP concept questions, then these are coming to save you, right? So that is why they are there. And not to say you should always do these things. Everybody should do a sport. Everybody should go to hackathons. That is not the takeaway here. I just want you to understand these things are the ones that are coming to help you in a time of crisis, right? So yeah, okay. So that is it. I have to say, if you've done everything correctly, you are hired. And I have attached few um, appendices into this slide set, which will help you to come across. I mean, you know, which will help you to identify yourself properly. So education evidence, you can fill this matrix and try to understand where you stand. And also you can do a SWOT analysis on yourself. This is called a personal SWOT analysis. So you can do a what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. Likewise, you can understand yourself. Also, I will give you a link to this career development plan. This is a Word document. You can download this and fill these things up. This has like questions. Do I like working face to face with customers or back office work, right? So what are my goals, short term, long term? What is my preferred balance between work and personal life? Likewise, there are many questions here. You can answer them and try to understand a bit about yourself. This will like help you to uh, go ahead and create a good career, or rather select a job. Maybe depends on how you use it. So I'll give you a link to this. Also, if you want to check for the trending frameworks, industry trending frameworks, or other the best programming language that people use around the world, you can go to this State of JS website, State of JavaScript. This has like trending frameworks and all related to JavaScript. I'll just try to show you one maybe. So go to libraries and go to front-end frameworks. And based on the satisfaction, you can see by 2021, Solid framework, Solid JS is coming to the top. And then we have Svelte, and then we have React, and then Vue and Alpine JS. Likewise, those are the things that is based on satisfaction. If I go to the interests, Svelte comes first. Likewise, so you can check for these surveys, and then you can get an understanding about how the industry behaves, and then you can pick one. If you're fed up with React, if you want to learn something new, you should learn Solid. Likewise, you can do that as well. This is for level 1 and 2 people. And also Stack Overflow developer survey. This is something I mentioned every time. So here also you can get an understanding about what are so this section is what is the most popular technologies. So you can see JavaScript is the most popular, and then HTML, CSS, SQL, Python, TypeScript, Java, C Sharp, shell scripting, PHP. Likewise, there are many sections here, so you can go ahead and look for those things. This is Stack Overflow developer survey for 2022. Yeah. So yes, right. So this is personal SWOT analysis, and if anybody had to do a physical interview, that is a different area. As I mentioned, you should dress appropriately, keep eye contact, be aware of your movements. Likewise, dress appropriately. There are many things, right? So the key thing that I identified as going to interviews when I was your age is, yeah, sorry. Um, is this is not, these people are not trying to eat you alive. These people are here to check whether you have the qualities that they want, and if you do have those qualities, they will hire you. If not, they will tell you, okay, we will inform you later this week, and they will never call back, right? So that is what is going to happen. So don't be afraid. Just think about, this is something, this is a conversation. This is not this is you as an individual try to say what you know and what you have done, and they ask from you what they want. This is an exchange, right? This is a market, supermarket. Think about that scenario. So you go, I mean, not a supermarket, maybe the Sunday market in your hometown, something like that. So you go ahead and sit there and you try to sell something, and these people come and they are trying to buy something. So if these things match, then you will get the job. If not, you will not. So there are other opportunities as well, right? So one time, if you get rejected once, that doesn't mean you are not a good candidate. They don't want you. That doesn't mean everybody else don't want you, right? So keep in mind that, because that is the most important thing. And here also, don't be scared. Just say what you have to say, but be prepared, because you within one or 2 minutes, if you can't understand, I mean, if you can't give us the correct answers, we know that you are not prepared. So that is a thing as well, right? Okay, so Appendix D has like career paths. I'm not going to go through all of those things. So we have quality assurance and all user experience. Likewise, you can go about reading about those things and go ahead. So yeah, I'll end the session here. So if you have any questions, you can ask while you prepare your questions. I'll try to put these links in the chat.
So thank you so much, Saya, for taking time to so neatly explain and share your valuable knowledge and experience with us today. The session has been so fruitful with all the facts explained, instilled in our mind. And yes, Saya, I kindly invite you to accept this virtual token of appreciation for your valued presence and efforts in empowering the IT undergraduates of our faculty.
Yeah, thank you guys. Oh, and I wish you all the very best for your interviews and all your studies as well. So maybe hopefully we will meet again in the future, maybe in the industry or in another session. Thank you.
Okay.